Halfway through the snap, Tony turns to Nebula and says, "Thanos was right." Nebula, who had just snapped her fingers and erased half of all life in the universe, looked over at him in confusion. Thanos was right about what? About what he had done. No, Thanos was right about something else, something much bigger. In another universe, after defeating Thanos and bringing everyone back, Tony Stark had decided that the best course of action was to kill Thanos. He had the power to do it. He could end the threat once and for all. But when push came to shove, he couldn't do it. He couldn't take a life, not even the life of someone who had just wiped out half of all life in the universe. And in that moment of weakness, Thanos regained his strength, snapped his fingers, and erased Tony from existence. Nebula was devastated. She had just snapped her fingers and erased half of all life in the universe, including her adoptive father and the man she loved. All because of Tony's weakness. Now he was gone, disappeared into the vast emptiness of space, leaving behind a universe full of grief and despair. Nebula fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face, as she watched the mad Titan disappear into the horizon. She knew that she had made a terrible mistake. She had allowed Tony's weakness to consume him, and it had cost them everything. But it wasn't too late. Maybe there was still a way to bring him back, to undo what she had done. But as she searched the wreckage of the battlefield, she found no sign of life, only the cold, dead bodies of her enemies. With a heavy heart, Nebula made her way back to the Guardians, who were mourning the loss of their friend. She told them what had happened, how Tony had hesitated and Thanos had used his chance to escape. At first, they were angry, furious at Tony for what he had done. But as they looked into Nebula's tearful eyes, they understood that it wasn't Tony's fault, it was theirs. They had all failed. Drax, who had lost his family in the snap, punched Nebula in the face, knocking her down. "You should have killed him," he growled, his voice filled with rage and sadness. "You should have killed him when you had the chance." Nebula looked up at him, her eyes filled with remorse. "I tried," she whispered, "but I couldn't." Drax shook his head, his anger slowly turning to sadness. "I am sorry, Nebula," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We are all sorry." Together, the Guardians and Nebula stood in silence, mourning the loss of their friend and the destruction of the universe. They knew that they would never bring Tony back now, but they also knew that they had to move on. They had to pick up the pieces and try to rebuild what had been destroyed. As they turned to leave, Nebula looked back at the empty sky, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Tony," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." In the distance, the Guardians followed Nebula, each of them lost in their own thoughts, each of them carrying the weight of the universe on their shoulders. Together, they walked into the darkness, hoping that somehow, someday, they would find a way to bring back their friend and restore balance to the universe. But deep down, they knew that this might be a hopeless quest, a futile search for a lost soul in a dying galaxy. Still, they had to try. Because what was the alternative? To give up? To surrender to the darkness? No, they couldn't do that. Not while there was still hope, however faint, that they could save their friend and save the universe. After a few moments, Nebula turned to Rocket and asked, "Where do we go from here?" Rocket shrugged, his eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I just want to go home." Nebula nodded, understanding. They all wanted to go home, but home was gone now. It had been destroyed, along with half of the universe. "Then let's go home," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Let's find a new home together." Rocket looked up at her, a small smile forming on his lips. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, let's do that." Together, they walked away from the battlefield, leaving behind the ghosts of the past, and embracing the uncertainty of the future. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they were ready to face it together. Because that's what friends do. That's what families do. They stick together, no matter how dark things get.